Like, comment, subscribe, and let's do this.
On the 30th of June 2025, a reporter named Linildo Frazão went live from the Miriam River in Brazil to cover a tragic incident that happened there just a day earlier. In the early hours of June 29, a group of teenagers had decided to go for a swim in the river. Unfortunately, they underestimated its depth, resulting in the disappearance of 13-year-old Raíssa Fernandes. Seconds after entering the water, her friends watched her dip beneath the surface, and that was the last time anyone saw her alive. Divers looked for her underwater, while rescuers scoured the riverbank, hoping she might have washed ashore somewhere. But even after hours of searching, Raíssa was nowhere to be found. Linildo intended to use this broadcast as an opportunity to educate viewers on the dangers of river currents and general river safety, not knowing that he was about to solve the mystery of Raíssa's disappearance on live TV. He took off his shoes and started slowly walking into the river while talking about the sudden increase in depth and how dangerous it can be for inexperienced swimmers.
Quanto mais você desce, mais fundo fica. Ó, aqui, ó. Até que aqui é de boa, mas só que é uma descida. Aqui onde ela se afogou, gente, é uma descida. Pra você ver aqui, ó, o tanto que eu passei aqui, daqui dá mais ou menos uns 2,5 metros. Ó, e quanto mais você anda, ó a diferença aqui já onde eu estou agora, ó. Então, pessoal, e ainda tem a correnteza. Olha, ó, um passinho para frente, a água já está praticamente me cobrindo. Então, o risco aqui é muito grande, é muito grande.
However, nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to encounter just seconds later.
Ó a fundura aqui, ó. Ui.
Whoa! What?
Eu acho que tem um negócio aqui no fundo da água.
Damn. So he stepped on her.
Não, era mole.
Probably. Yeah, he did step on her.
Ela não.
Or her body.
While trying to demonstrate the river's deceptive drop-off, Linildo accidentally stepped on something lying on the riverbed. It was too soft and organic feeling to be a rock or a submerged log, which caught him off guard. The murky water made it impossible to see beneath the surface. But Linildo was starting to realize what it could be, leaving him too disturbed to go back and investigate further.
Yeah, you can
tell. He got out of the water and contacted authorities immediately. And it wasn't long before divers recovered the remains of Raíssa from that exact spot. Later autopsy report confirmed that there was no foul play involved. What happened to her was nothing more than a tragic accident.
This is tragic, man. And so sad too. She was young. I think he said she was 13. This is why I never go like to rivers and all that. Even swimming. If I'm in a swimming pool, I'm on the shallow end. I never really try to go to the deeper end. I know I have to like learn to swim in those conditions, but I never willingly do that because I feel like it's dangerous and anything can happen. Even when you know how to swim, anything can happen that could lead you to be in that like situation. I'm not saying people shouldn't go having fun, going into rivers but just know that that can happen. I don't know if to say like take measures, put on vests. I forget what they're called, but those vests that people take when they go to oceans and all that. But take some precautions, take some measures against having something like this happen. But this was sad, man. Rest in peace to her.
On September 25, 2025, the CBS 6 station in Albany, New York received a strange email with a 2-page document. It contained a nearly incomprehensible rant featuring Arnold Schwarzenegger, archaic centuries-old laws, and a proposal to create a board of trustees with prosecutorial immunity. However, the most important aspect of this document wasn't its content. Instead—
Wait, when was this? I didn't hear that, I'm sorry.
On September 25, 2025, the CBS 6 station in Albany, New York received a strange email with a 2-page document. It contained a nearly incomprehensible rant featuring Arnold Schwarzenegger, archaic centuries-old laws, and a proposal to create a board of trustees with prosecutorial immunity. However, the most important aspect of this document wasn't its content. Instead, the reason it stood out among the hundreds of emails the channel received every day was its author, 53-year-old Lawrence Krauss, who also included a selfie alongside the document. You see, Lawrence was currently under investigation for ending the lives of his own parents and getting away with it for over 8 years. It happened in August 2017. His 86-year-old father and 83-year-old mother were living out their retirement in their home in Crestwood Court in Albany, New York. And suddenly they were gone without a trace. None of the neighbors saw them leaving or heard anything about where they were going. Their house was also left abandoned, with Lawrence only visiting it occasionally to collect mail, mow the lawn, and clear the snow. When asked about his parents, he claimed that they had moved back to Germany and won't be coming back. The neighbors had no reason to distrust Lawrence, so no one questioned their absence and life went on as usual. A distant relative even requested a welfare check in 2020, but the neighbors repeated the same explanation.
Brother, every time you watch these stories or listen to these stories, and it's a kid or just an old guy, or just somebody really, when they get asked, like, where are your parents? Where's this person that you live with? And they're like, oh, they went back to our home country, or they're in another country. Oh, they moved to another state. Oh, I don't know. If it's a story in this compilation, more often than not, they did something to those people. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. And he probably wasn't even living there because of what happened there. He didn't have the mental strength to go back there or live there. I know he went back there to for mail and to clear out the grass, but that's probably the main reason he no longer lives there.
Lawrence had given, ending the officer's questioning without any further suspicion. It wasn't until mid-2025 that the Albany police became aware of something shady going on with the Krauss family. Someone had been collecting Lawrence's parents' social security payments, even though the two hadn't been seen in years. This resulted in the police launching a formal investigation, and after months, finally executing a search warrant at the Krauss home on September 23rd. Over the next 48 hours, detectives collected thousands of financial documents and other evidence. More importantly, they discovered the remains of Lawrence's parents buried in the backyard. Lawrence likely knew that he was the prime suspect in this case, but instead of turning himself in or trying to run away, he made the unusual decision of sending this document to the local news network alongside his contact information. One of the directors at CBS 6 was familiar with the Krauss case and immediately jumped at the opportunity to interview Lawrence. After giving him a call, Lawrence claimed that he was willing to do a live interview with the channel only if they published his document on the internet for everyone to see. The network agreed, and less than an hour later, Lawrence was sitting with a CBS 6 reporter for a live interview. Lawrence was a bit hesitant at first, but after some pressure, he cracked and confessed to everything.
I want to hear from you.
Yeah.
What did you do to your parents?
I buried them in their property.
You buried them in the backyard of that house in Albany.
Right.
When it actually happened, when your parents died, did they know it was happening?
Hell no!
Yeah.
And they knew it was at your hand?
Well, yes, no one else's.
Right. So they realized what you
Look
were doing
at how
to them
relaxed
as it
he
happened.
is.
Yes.
They knew that this was it for them, that they were perishing at your hand.
Yes. And it was so quick.
How did you do it?
Yeah, I can't talk about that.
Well, you've just told us that
Right.
it was at your hand.
Right.
Were there drugs involved? Was
no.
there a suffocation? You suffocated them? You suffocated your parents?
Hell no!
What made this confession
Look at how relaxed he is. He's talking about it like it's a normal Tuesday. He went shopping, like it's something normal to do. I've realized, people who take people's lives, there has to be something wrong with you. Because almost all of them are like that. Your average person, if you killed someone, you wouldn't even be acting relaxed like that. It would do something to you. How is he so relaxed, bro? He is sick. You could tell from the way he's talking too. This is a sick man. He is disturbed.
So disturbing, however, was the way Lorenz tried to portray it as something righteous. His argument essentially boiled down to, my parents were suffering from old age, so I did them a favor. Even though the neighbors described the couple as elderly, they were by no means sick or bedridden. They had normal routines where they tended to their garden, shared mint leaves with neighbors' kids, and listened to Polish music every day. Their lives weren't nearly as miserable as Lawrence tried to portray during this interview. Now, it's unclear if he's severely mentally ill and genuinely believed everything he was saying, or if this interview was his way of trying to paint himself as the concerned son to earn the public's favor before his inevitable arrest. In either case, he had no way of escaping the consequences of his heartless actions. He was arrested immediately after walking out of the network's building and is currently awaiting trial for the death of his parents.
He is dumb too. You know I said he is sick and he's demented, but you know what it probably is? It's probably just greed. He just wanted the money. And he was wondering, when are these people going to die so I can make these claims, so I can claim this money from their social security, so I can take this money from that life insurance. All that, it was probably just greed. At the end of the day, that's what it was, and he's trying to paint it as like he's the hero in the story. That's probably just what it was. But you have to be like sick to kill another person. I'll give him that.
On the night of October 28, 2023, the Utilita Arena in Sheffield, England was packed with over 8,000 spectators. They were there to watch the ice hockey match between the Nottingham Panthers and the Sheffield Steelers. The whole thing was also being broadcast live on TV for fans across the world, and the match started off completely normal. The first period ended without either team scoring a point. About 35 minutes later, the score was 4-2 in favor of the Sheffield Steelers. The Panthers needed to score soon if they wanted to make a comeback. So, one of their more renowned players, Adam Johnson, got a hold of the puck and started pushing into the Steelers' defensive zone. But before he could reach the goal, the match got interrupted by one of the most tragic incidents in ice hockey history. As Adam was making his way to the goal, a different player of his team bumped into Matt Petgrave of the Steelers. This resulted in Matt getting launched in the air and slicing Adam's neck with one of his skates. For those who don't know, professional hockey skates are sharpened to a razor's edge. So it took very little force to leave a deep laceration across Adam's neck, causing him to bleed profusely in front of both the live crowd and the TV audience. Medics at the arena tried to stop the bleeding, but the cut was too deep. He had already lost a lot of blood on the ice. Adam was then rushed to a nearby hospital. Unfortunately, despite going into surgery as quickly as possible, Adam couldn't survive the injury and passed away just hours later. Matt was arrested shortly after on suspicion that he had cut Adam on purpose. However, investigators found no foul play in Adam's death and ultimately ruled it a tragic accident. The only silver lining in this entire case is that it resulted in the English Ice Hockey Association making neck guards mandatory for all players, something that would have likely prevented this from happening altogether. But at the time, wearing this protective gear was only a suggestion. On the evening
This is tragic. I didn't even know something like that can happen in hockey. Well, granted that I really don't watch hockey and I'm not into hockey like that, but I never thought something like that was a possibility. That is tragic, man. Rest in peace to Adam. I think that's his name. Rest in peace to Adam. That's a really sad way to go out, too. Doing something you love.
of September 2, 2011, TVN, one of the biggest networks in Chile, was airing the latest episode of a show called Calle 7. It was a live game show where teams competed in various challenges to make their way to the top, and this weekend's episode was supposed to be no different. But things took a disturbing turn about halfway through the episode when the show's host interrupted the competitors seemingly out of nowhere and told them to stop.
Quiero que paren la competencia. Quiero que paren la competencia, por favor. Nos acaba de llegar una información muy difícil de entregar. No habíamos querido decir nada antes de chequear bien lo que estaba sucediendo porque compromete a personajes del canal, a personas muy queridas, a un equipo del canal, entre ellos Felipe Camiroaga y Bruce, Roberto Bruce, que también estaba en aquel vuelo a la isla de Juan Fernández, según tengo entendido. Es información que nos está llegando en este momento. El Ministerio de Defensa informó esta tarde el presidente de la República que un equipo de TVN iba al borde de una nave de la Fuerza Aérea de Chile que capotó en el archipiélago de Juan Fernández.
However, the reason for this interruption had nothing to do with the show itself. The host was talking about the C-212 Chilean Air Force plane that departed from the Arturo Merino Benitez International Airport earlier that day at around 2 p.m. It was headed for the Robinson Crusoe Airport, located hundreds of miles off the coast of Chile. Aboard was a full TV crew from the network, including the two renowned presenters, Felipe Camiroaga and Roberto Bruce. They were visiting Robinson Crusoe Island to report on the reconstruction after the 2010 earthquake. The flight started without a hitch. Unfortunately, as they were approaching the runway, the wind became extremely strong, making it impossible to land. The pilot tried to land a couple of times, circling in the air after each attempt. However, on the third attempt, witnesses saw the plane lose altitude much faster than expected and crash into the ocean just a mile from the island.
That's
tragic.
By the
time rescuers reached the crash site,
Very
it was already
tragic.
too late. All 21 people aboard the C-212 plane had passed away. But while investigators initially believed that all of those deaths were due to the impact of the crash, the reality turned out to be far darker. As they were searching the wreckage, they found footage that one of the cameramen took of the interior shortly before the crash. The footage showed the passengers strapped into their seats, completely unaware of their fate. But the more haunting discovery happened when investigators found an SD card inside an empty water bottle floating near the crash site. This card contained hundreds of images. However, analysis of these images showed that 2 of them were taken after the crash, including one of the plane's windows covered in water. These images put the crash into a whole new perspective. They showed that several passengers, including the cameraman who took these photos and preserved the SD card in the bottle, likely survived the initial crash. Sadly, they were trapped inside a rapidly sinking plane with no way out, forced to watch their aircraft fill up with water until there was no air left to breathe.
That's so sad, bro.
Niagara Falls is widely regarded as one of the world's most breathtaking natural wonders. However, while the surface is undeniably beautiful, the depths beneath the falls hide the disturbing history of many who lost their lives to the currents. One such incident was captured live on TV on May 30, 1985, when reporter Phil Kavitz was hosting.
Wait, where is Niagara Falls? Because I know from a video I've watched before, I've heard like another side of it is on the US side, and another side, a better view of it, is on the Canada side. I don't know exactly where it is, but if somebody knows, put that in the comments, because I really did forget where it is and I want to know. Put that in the comments.
Hosting a section about real estate in front of the falls. Suddenly, in the background, the camera captured a man caught in the current behind Phil. The rushing water carried him to the edge of the falls before throwing him over the 170-foot drop. And while a lucky few have survived the fall from the Niagara Falls, he wasn't one of them. The treacherous terrain under the falls also made it difficult to retrieve his remains. Once recovered, investigators identified the man as 56-year-old Robert Ahrens and concluded that the act was deliberate. However, Robert was only one of the 5,000 bodies that have been recovered from the foot of the falls in the last 175 years. Many of these 5,000 deaths were intentional, but there were a lot that weren't. And unfortunately, surviving a fall from Niagara Falls is near impossible. Once you fall in, the cold water makes it extremely difficult to breathe, making it even more challenging to swim to the surface. The water near the edge can also move at over 60 miles per hour, adding another layer of difficulty to an already impossible challenge.
You have to be strong.
The jagged rocks at the base of the falls is what marks the end for most people.
You really have to be strong to swim in 60-mile-per-hour waters. I don't even know if the strongest swimmers can swim in that. But that's insane though, because it looks like it's a hot spot for people taking their own lives. Since this was in the past, are there any structures to stop people from doing that now? Or it's still the same and this kind of event still happens there? If somebody knows, again, if somebody knows, put that in the comments. I would think with the way things are going in the world, and I think there are like measures put in place to stop this kind of thing from happening.
On the 23rd of August 2010 at around 10 a.m., 21 tourists from Hong Kong returned to their tour bus after visiting the historic Fort Santiago in Manila, Philippines. They were also accompanied by 3 Filipino tour guides, and the trip had been going fantastic so far. But just as they were about to set out to the next location, they got interrupted by a middle-aged man in a police uniform. He was openly carrying multiple firearms, and his demeanor made it clear he wasn't afraid to use them either, something that became even more apparent as time went on. For now, things started off fairly calm, with him asking the driver for a ride to the next station. The bus driver tried to reject the request respectfully, explaining that he couldn't let him on because it was a private vehicle, not a public bus. However, the man wasn't having any of it. As soon as the bus driver rejected his request, he equipped one of his firearms and claimed that he was taking the bus hostage. This was 55-year-old Rolando Mendoza, a police officer with nearly 30 years of service. But he'd recently been fired over drug charges that Rolando claimed were untrue. Getting fired left him with no pension after 3 decades of hard work. And while he tried to fight for his job through official means, his superiors wouldn't listen. In an act of desperation and defiance, Rolando took this bus full of tourists hostage and presented a single demand: he wanted his job back. The situation so far looked fairly manageable, with 2 of his former colleagues establishing communications without any pushback. They were even able to convince him to release a few of the hostages. Granting his relatively simple demand would have been easy, but what followed was one of the biggest hostage disasters in the country's history, all because those in charge couldn't agree on the next move. Things started going downhill when Rolando's brother tried to approach the bus and was immediately detained by the officers. This made the already furious Rolando even angrier and more unstable. The situation only got worse once the media got involved. Nearly every news channel in the country started broadcasting the situation live. They talked about everything, including the plans officials were making outside. What they didn't know, however, was that the bus had a working TV and Rolando was watching and listening in on everything. This could have helped him formulate a plan and get what he wanted without hurting anyone. Unfortunately, the lackluster response from the officials made a peaceful resolution near impossible. His anger reached a boiling point when he saw how his brother was being treated by the police on live TV. This resulted in Rolando getting blinded by rage and opening fire on the hostages. Around the same time, the bus driver managed to free himself from the handcuffs Rolando put him in and escape through the driver's side door. Unfortunately, while he was able to remain unharmed, other hostages weren't as lucky, since, according to the bus driver, they were all dead, leaving Rolando alone in the bus. This revelation gave authorities the go-ahead to surround the bus and try to break in without any more casualties. But Rolando wasn't willing to go down without a fight. As soon as they tried to enter through the emergency exit, Rolando opened fire, hitting one officer on his bulletproof helmet and barely missing the others. So the officers thought of a different strategy. They flooded the back of the bus with tear gas.
I don't know if this is dumb to say, but why wouldn't they just say, okay, bro, you have your job back. You have your job back. Let them people go. We'll even give you a raise. We'll even promote you. Just let the people go. And as soon as the guy clocks into work, arrest the guy. Maybe I'm dumb to say that, but that would have been the easier way. They just made it hard for themselves. They put a lot of people's lives in danger. A lot of people lost their lives. This was an easy solve. I don't know how it went wrong. Hey man, do you not have hostage negotiators? Like, when was this? I think it's in the 2010s. I forgot exactly when he said this happened, but it looks recent, at least in the 2010s, which makes me like even wonder more. Where were the hostage negotiators? This was an easy one. Some random guy could have just negotiated this. But I guess he wanted to talk to the police to give him his job back. Still, it shouldn't have went this way.
Forcing him to the front, right into the crosshairs of a sniper, finally ending the hostage crisis. It wasn't until after his death that police realized the bus driver had misunderstood the situation and that 9 of the hostages were still alive. The massive loss of innocent lives broadcast live for the world to see, coupled with officials making wrong decisions at every turn, drew intense global scrutiny. marking this as one of the worst and most tragic incidents in Filipino history.
This last one just enrages me because you should have just promised him his job back. This wouldn't have happened. Every step of it, everything just went wrong. The driver said everyone is dead. People were alive. Oh my god. But anyway, a lot of these were very tragic events that personally I don't wanna witness something like that in my lifetime because these are very disturbing. Oh my god, bro. But anyway, if you want me to watch more Chillin' Scares videos, any video from Chillin' Scares, put the links in the comments to the specific video that you want me to watch and I'll get to it. And on that note, thank you for watching and I'll see you on the next one.